Well, welcome back to another episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Do not adjust your dial. You can certainly tell from the outset that I am not Steve Riley, but I am, and unless, by the way, you're a fanatic of the podcast and have been listening to every episode twice, you won't recognize my voice as the guest from episode 5. But my name is Victor Medina, and in addition to being a practicing attorney in the Northeast, I am an adjunct practice advisor for the Atticus coaching company. And I was asked to do this podcast and serve as a guest host because Steve had reached out to me and said, do you know anybody that would be a great guest? And I nominated today's guest, and I started to go off about how incredible Jonathan is and why he would be a fantastic guest. And Steve turned to me and said, well, would you like to interview him? And I said, well, listen, if you trust the podcast in my hands for one episode, then I will be happy to interview him, because I've got to tell you that it is my privilege to interview Jonathan White today and bring him to you as a listener, because he is an incredible story that you're going to enjoy listening to. He's got a great background. And one of the things that I find most interesting is that our relationship began because Jonathan is in a program that I co-lead with another of the podcast's guest, Mark Metzger, and he's been in that program for a little while, but he is a model coaching client. I must have an affinity for him because he's also, pardon the pun, the white version of me. We are both fans of Marvel, Star Wars, Apple products. We both have 3 boys that we are raising. We both are the owners of a practice that is, focuses on estate planning, things like that. We love all things in the Northeast, fans of that. And we have both way outkicked our coverage with our life partners, because in addition to having led Jonathan in programs, I've had the honor of getting to know him as a personal friend of mine, as well as his wife, Carrie. And I will tell you that he doesn't deserve her, just in the same way that I don't seem to deserve my wife. So with that as an introduction, welcome to the show, Jonathan. It is such a pleasure to have you on, and I think our listeners are really going to enjoy your story. Welcome.
Victor, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I want to know how much Jen and Carrie paid you for that text. I am extremely, extremely grateful to be here today, and I'm very glad to have the opportunity to talk about what my experience has been.
Well, let me set up for the show why you're such an incredible get on as a guest. It's an interesting journey when I lead groups and I have an opportunity to get in front of different people, and it's really rewarding for me to watch the transformations happen when we're leading groups. But you sit in the front of the class every time that we run it. You're there early holding your seat. Before anybody else shows up, you arrive and claim your seat at the front of the class. And you implement a lot of the ideas so well, so effectively. You've been featured in the Atticus community as somebody that adopted the planner that the company has issued out as one of its tools to help strategy. And you were there showcasing it. So what's great about you is that you're able to take ideas and then begin to run with them. And so we're going to get into a conversation today about one of the strategies that we've been trying to lead you through that took a little while to take root, and why that might have been the case, what broke the logjam, and where you are today. But before we get into that topic, I think it's really important to learn a little bit about your history and get to how you arrived being an attorney and having the practice that you have. So take us back a little bit, sort of what was your upbringing? And then we won't spend 20 minutes on this, but how did we get from that into getting interested in law school, and then what we did soon afterwards? Do you mind sharing that with us?
No, not at all. So I grew up in Massachusetts. I lived in Massachusetts my whole life. A town called Medford, just 5 miles north of Boston. Growing up in the Boston area in the late 70s and 80s, in the shadow of Bobby Orr, we gravitated to hockey, whether we were on a pond, in a rink, or on a driveway. So we very quickly became apparent hockey was going to be a part of my life. And that shaped my education. I had the opportunity to go to a private school south of Boston in Braintree, which is kind of crazy that I commuted every day from Medford to Braintree before there was the big dig in the tunnel. So I was on the elevated highway that crawled through Boston, but that was the hockey school at the time. So that's where I went. What I didn't know at the time was I was not only going to get a phenomenal education, because I did. It was a top-notch school. It was up there, Academy. Top-notch school. I had no idea what I was in for there. But what also kind of happened is I started getting people around me that gave me good advice. And I kind of learned to blindly follow it over the years. So as I was matriculating from there to college, I had the opportunity to go to some really good schools. Didn't have the level of hockey that I wanted to chase, or I could have gone to the schools at the level of hockey I wanted to chase and try and walk on without a scholarship. And those people that were in the position to give me advice, I just kind of blindly followed, said, "What, are you kidding me? You can go to a college like Holy Cross, get a phenomenal education and play good hockey, or you could go to UNH, for example, have a great education, no problem with that education. But how do you know what's going to happen? Don't be an idiot. Take the education and the known quantity." So I kind of followed that.
Steve is fond of saying that when lawyers start their own practice, they don't have an entrepreneurial fit. They have an autonomy and independence fit. And so, that sounds a little bit of what I was like, listen, I haven't been carrying anybody's briefcase for a certain point in time. I'm certainly not going to go backwards into this. And, triggers that discussion.
Well, there's that. And there were two other things. One of the things, Tom Riley, who was the attorney general at the time, invested in his staff and would have meetings that you could go to. And one of them was, especially for the trial attorneys, learning when to fight and learning how to fight and fighting reputable. And so I remember I got scolded at the new firm because I assented basically to a discovery motion that the court was going to allow. But the scolding was because I gave up X many billable hours. And it didn't jive with me. And so you're right. It was more the, I can't do it. I came home one day to Carrie. I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. And we considered our options. And I'd always wanted to kind of start my own business. Never really knew how, never knew what, but we agreed, this could be the impetus to do it. So, that was in 2009. I hung my shingle. My original, and Carrie was awesome. She said, I'm completely unprepared for this. She is on the spot and said, "I'll let you do it because I carry benefits with my job. So I know we'll have health insurance at a minimum. Right. But I want you to write a business plan. I want you to really put down on paper what you can do." And I have that business plan and I look at it from time to time because it's amazing, one, how crude it was. I might as well have done it on the napkin with a crayon. Compared to what we're doing at Atticus. And two, my practice could not be farther from what I wrote on that paper than what it is today. I had set myself up to do the opposite of what I had done so far. I was going to do plaintiff's personal injury and criminal defense. And that's what I was going to do. And I started down that road. And Victor, I worked on a computer out of my house. I had a friend who had an office in Medford Square and he let me use his conference room. I was able to take 2 cases with me from the insurance company because the client liked me and they were small enough cases. They didn't care that I had them. And then I very quickly found some other attorneys in the area and took their dogs. I took their dogs. And a couple of things started kind of happening in this 2009-ish period. One was my friend, and this is another one of these things. I've been lucky to develop really good friendships in my life. And I have about a handful that are extremely meaningful. And one is this, he's an attorney. I've known him since we were in the first grade. We grew up together. We went to school together. We separated for college. We got back together, went to law school together, and we remain friends to this day. He's my oldest son's godfather. And he had the spot in Medford Square. And he said, listen, I have a supply closet. I can clean it out and you can rent it from me because you should have an office. And it was awesome. I could walk to it from our house and, I'm going to charge you $250. And I'm like, I can't afford that. I don't know what I'm going to do. And it was literally like 5 by 3, but it was a desk. It was a spot. And something about that made me look at what I was doing differently because now it wasn't my kitchen table. So that was fantastic.